Hey, it's NPR's Book of the Day. I'm Andrew Limbong. All right, so today we've got two books that are made for reading with your kids, and they cover similar territory. They're both about the thirst for adventure, the feeling you have as a kid that there's just something bigger, greater, grander out there for you to find. In a bit, we'll hear about a mouse who wants to be a sea captain. But first, we've got an interview with comedian and former Daily Show host Trevor Noah. His book, Into the Uncut Grass, is about a mother and a child who struggle to understand each other. They have a hard time seeing the other's perspective. And even though it's about a parent and a kid, in this interview with NPR's Ayesha Rascoe, he presents it more as a fable of how we could all be better at understanding each other. That's ahead.
This message comes from Atlantic Records with Coldplay's new album, Moon Music, available now. Featuring the song Feels Like I'm Falling in Love, Rolling Stone calls Moon Music a peak Coldplay moment. More info about Coldplay tour dates at coldplay.com. Support for this podcast and the following message come from Autograph Collection Hotels, with over 300 independent hotels around the world, each exactly like nothing else. Autograph Collection is part of the Marriott Bonvoy portfolio of hotel brands. Find the unforgettable at autographcollection.com.
The two friends held hands as they walked farther and farther away from the house. They passed the lawn chairs where the boy and his mother would sometimes read together, and the fire pit where they toast marshmallows. They passed the tire swing hanging from the short, thick-limbed tree. They even wandered past the old shed with the heavy lock on it. That's a passage from the new book, Into the Uncut Grass. Trevor Noah is its author, and he joins us now. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you so much for having me.
So this book is about a young boy and his teddy bear, Walter, and an adventure they have just beyond his home in the uncut grass. What does the uncut grass mean to you?
When I think about the internal adventure or the internal world that exists in a child's imagination, I often think to myself how sad it is that we lose so much of it. And this book really is a tale of a young boy who does not want to do what his mother has told him to do, which is make the bed.
I mean, I don't make the bed myself, so I really get where he's coming from on that.
Exactly. It's an act of rebellion.
Is the little boy you? He doesn't have a name. He does have bushy hair. I don't know what a young Trevor Noah looks like, but I feel like he could be you.
He could be me, but I mean, he could be anyone, really. It's more the idea of the child than the child themselves. It's something that connects us in such a beautiful way. If you ever see kids playing together, they don't get caught up in the who is who and what is what. If anything, kids define each other more by the activities that they enjoy versus how they identify.
They never know anyone's name.
Yeah,
you
exactly.
ask a kid, who are your friends? I don't remember their names. They just know it's the people they play with. That's not important. The name isn't important.
Yeah, and I actually don't think it is.
I had my son, who's 11, read this book. And I asked him about the perspective of the boy. And he said the boy wanted adventure. And then I asked him, I said, well, what do you think about the mom? And he was like, the mom wanted him to do chores. I said, well, why do you think the mom wanted that? And he was like, because he lives under her roof. Which gave me a perspective into how he looks at it. And I've probably said that. I've probably said you live here in this house and you got to participate. But I probably need to do better explanation of why. Because he said the mom was being unreasonable.
I'm so glad you had that with your son, because you'll be shocked at how many times and how many children out there just don't understand their parents' point of view, nor do their parents actively try to explain it to them. And I often think to myself, I wonder what would happen if every parent spent a little more time trying to explain to every child why they're participating in the rules of the house and what it actually means. I'm actually really happy that your son came to that conclusion, because that is a kid's point of view, is that parents are unreasonable.
Yes. Well, I mean, I want to ask you, in the foreword of the book, you write that Part of this is about disagreements and difference and bridging those gaps, whether we're kids, parents, neighbors, or political adversaries. In this political moment, what do you think this book has to say about how people can understand someone who thinks about things differently when it comes to politics?
I think oftentimes we take for granted how many conversations and arguments we get into with people before we have tried to understand or before we have tried to explore. Exploration is key. Exploration is us not presuming an answer, not assuming an ending, but rather probing and being curious as to what we may find. I think imagination is more important than we give it credit for, because it's literally how we create everything. All of the constructs that society exists within are the imagination. Where's the border of one country versus another? We imagine it, and then we draw it on a map. But really, it's not real. It's a fiction that we've all agreed to in society. And so once we're able to try and understand, I think there's a level of our imagination that expands. And all of a sudden, you can see a person as being more whole than they are. Because in the book, the child sees their mom as their mom. The child doesn't think of the mom as being a person.
Not a complete person, right? Just like they don't have an interior life that you understand. They don't have desires outside of you.
No.
Like they live to serve you.
Yes, exactly.
Or to thwart you. Like it's one or the other.
Yeah, that's exactly it. I think in many ways that's what we do to other people in society. We label people by their political affiliation. We call them that, and that becomes the defining characteristic. And I think what then happens is politicians leverage that and convince people that they should only live within that political designation, which then limits people's abilities to connect with each other. We don't live with politicians. We live with each other.
But Trevor, I know some people will listen to that and say, look, I hear what you're saying. And there's a quote in the book that jumped out to me, and it was this: every person is just an obstacle unless you try to understand them.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's a beautiful sentiment. But how do you deal with the kind of fundamental disagreements that people feel now? People feel like you are trying to threaten my right to exist. I can't find a middle ground with you.
Well, this book isn't prescriptive, nor is it trying to say that it's found a solution. But what I believe, honestly, is there can be no hope of finding any solution until people sit down. I am yet to see a story of any major conflict around the world between nations or between groups or between people that was arrived at by people who didn't sit down together. Show me a treaty that wasn't reached by people who sat down together. I would argue there are none. And now I understand fundamentally. People go, well, I won't engage in. Yeah, I understand that completely as a sentiment. And I think on a societal level, you owe it to yourself to be curious, and you owe it to yourself to try and at least understand where other people are coming from. You don't have to agree with them, but if you understand, it makes it a little less crazy. Like a simple analogy I think of is like, imagine if you're waiting for an elevator and then the doors open and you try and step into the elevator and the other people are trying to step out of there and they're blocking you, and you're trying to go in but they're blocking you, and they're trying to, if you don't understand that they're trying to step out of the elevator and they don't understand that you're trying to step into it, you can literally just stand there and block each other for infinity, really. And it's a stupid example, but I really do think that's the fundamental idea of understanding, is realizing that, oh, I think that in this moment you're blocking me, but actually what's happening is you're trying to go there and I'm trying to go there. And if we understand this, I might be able to move out of the way so you can go where you need to go, and then I'll go where I need to go. The honest answer I would give you is what I apply to my life. I try to understand.
You spent 7 years hosting The Daily Show. Did you feel like your humor over that time, did you feel like it was a uniting force?
I looked at it as a way to process reality. That's what humor is first and foremost for me. It's a bridge, between what you're experiencing and what you thought you would experience. My humor, I would never say is or isn't anything. I think humor is very subjective. And so some people might think, oh, that joke is wonderful. It brought us together. I've had many people who've said that. But then I'm sure there's some people like, I don't like that thing that you said. Okay. But ironically, it might not be my humor, actually. It might be my point of view that the people don't like. So I've learned to separate the two. Someone might find something funny, but not like where I come from. And I understand that. And when I look at The Daily Show as a whole, I've always made sure that it was a space where anyone could come with any point of view. We had Republicans on The Daily Show all the time. We had libertarians. We had, you name it, because I always believed that conversation was the beginning of the journey that takes you, as the book suggests, into the uncut grass, this area that is not traversed, that holds a whole lot of mystery, that may or may not lead to a solution that you're seeking, but definitely doesn't leave you existing in the current state that you're in.
That's Trevor Noah. His new book is Into the Uncut Grass. Thank you so very much for talking with me today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Support for NPR and the following message come from IXL Online. Is your child asking questions on their homework you don't feel equipped to answer? IXL Learning uses advanced algorithms to give the right help to each kid, no matter the age or personality. One subscription gets you everything. One site for all the kids in your home, pre-K to 12th grade. Make an impact on your child's learning. Get IXL now. And NPR listeners can get an exclusive 20% off IXL membership when they sign up today at IXL.com/NPR.
Travis Jonker is an elementary school librarian. Matthew Cordell is a Caldecott-winning illustrator. They work together on The Ship in the Window, an epic story about a mouse and a boat. NPR's Samantha Balaban got them together to talk about crafting this story that's, again, about a parent and a child who don't quite see eye to eye. NPR's Ayesha Rascoe will tell you a bit more about the plot, and then the two of them take it from there.
Mabel the mouse lives in a little cabin on a lake.
The Ship in the Window it's a story about a mouse that kind of risks it all for a chance at adventure.
In librarian Travis Jonker's latest children's book, Mabel lives with a boy and his father, who spent months meticulously building a model ship.
At nighttime, Mabel will come out and she'll look at the ship and she'll wonder if it can sail like a real ship. She's the perfect size to be the captain, and she would love to try that sometime. It's the man's prized possession. He never lets anybody touch it. He doesn't let his son touch it. Until one night, the door is left open just a little bit. And Mabel realizes she can either try to get the ship outside and onto the lake, or she can stay in the safe cabin. And you can probably guess what choice she makes, but it doesn't quite turn out how she planned.
The Ship in the Window is illustrated by Caldecott medalist Matthew Cordell, and he and Travis Jonker share the story of the real model ship behind The Ship in the Window for our series of conversations between authors and illustrators. Picture this.
When my kids were little especially, we would visit this park that's nearby in Holland, Michigan. And right across from the park, there's a house that has this beautiful model ship in the window. And so I thought, I've seen this model ship so many times. What's a story that could go along with it?
Travis posted a picture yesterday on Instagram of him sitting in front of this house with a copy of our book. He says he does not know them.
I've visited a few different times now, and no one's ever home. I have my copy already inscribed. Thanks for the inspiration. I can't wait to give them a copy of the book, talk to them about it. I want to ask them about the model ship.
It's a huge ship, too. I mean, is it big? Like, it looks big in the photograph.
Yeah, it's probably, 3 feet tall or something like that, yeah.
Yeah, so the ship that I drew is not as big as that one, because if I drew the ship too big, the mouse would be, really tiny. So I had to consider that, too, but I knew nothing about sailing and ships or anything. So I did some research, and I found a ship called an H.M. Cutter Mermaid from 1817. I found a guy building the ship on YouTube, and I took a bunch of screenshots of this guy. Thanks, whoever you are.
One of the inspirations, too, for me for this story was picture books from the past that I really love. We both really love William Steig's work. The book that really stuck out to me when thinking about The Ship in the Window was Amos and Boris. That's another, mouse main character story, and it's on the high seas. And so I really had that in mind as I was working on this story. And I think Matthew's illustrations just completely nailed it.
after reading Travis's story, it felt like it could really benefit from this sort of heavily cross-hatched old world drawing approach. So they look almost sort of vintage, the drawings. A lot of line work, cross-hatched line drawings, and also sort of a limited palette. Very few colors, so it feels like it could have been printed in a different earlier time. So the book has this sort of old school look to it, and it reads the same way, I think.
I don't think I set out to be like, I want this to be sort of a vintage, timeless picture book, but I feel like once you start writing the story, sometimes that comes out of it, and then you sort of go with that feeling, you know? I have to say, too, one of my favorite videos, Matthew made some great ones while he was working on the book. There's a couple spreads where the amount of crosshatching that he does is like astounding. And so he made one video where he's doing all these thousands, millions of little marks, and then at the end he just passes out from exhaustion because of all the crosshatching that he had to do. It makes the illustrations so rich, so beautiful.
The ones that take the longest, there were a few that had night sky. So I was basically filling in a massive portion of the drawing in crossed lines. It would take me like a couple days sometimes. My brain would get a little screwy at times, but for the most part, it's kind of a nice, relaxing way to make a picture.
Yeah, I love the spread where Mabel notices that the door is open just a crack. I love it because you show like the representation of like the breeze blowing in, the curling breeze blowing in the door, and Mabel's like noticing that, and she's wondering if she's gonna give it a shot or not.
There's something really nice about mice. They're sort of the most humble of creatures. They're very small. They feel very harmless and vulnerable. I think it was a wise choice to choose a mouse as the character that brought together these more imposing sized mammals in the house.
One thing too that I was thinking about after the fact is the idea of like how many people have things in their life where they're saving it or they're not touching it or they don't want someone else to use it. You know, I think as like a parent all the time, there's like things that you're trying to keep safe from your kids. And honestly, the person that changes the most in the story is the man.
Yeah, the man is kind of not nice, seems like, you know. I wanted to draw him in that way where it felt like he was unapproachable and he wears these glasses. In fact, I don't think you ever see his eyes. You only see the reflection of the glasses, which makes him even a little more imposing.
He kind of goes from having this attitude of, this ship is my prized possession. I don't let anybody touch this thing. I don't let anybody help me to make it. To at the very end of the story, inviting the boy and even inviting Mabel in to kind of work together on it. And I guess I just like the idea of, hey, maybe if you actually just kind of like loosen up a little bit, it can open the door for this connection that wasn't there before.
That's one of the things I really liked about the story is how there's these three separate characters living their own existence. And by the end of it, they see the value of togetherness and not just working independently or creating independently or fantasizing and dreaming independently. And that's a really beautiful thing about the book, I think.
That was illustrator Matthew Cordell and author Travis Jonker talking about their new kids' book. And hey, if you are Travis Jonker's neighbor in Michigan and you have a model ship in your window, answer your door. He just wants to give you a copy of The Ship in the Window. For more conversations between authors and illustrators, you can head to npr.org/picturethis. Our series is produced by Samantha Balaban.
That's it for this week on NPR's Book of the Day. If you want more, you can sign up for our newsletter. It's at npr.org/newsletter/books. I'm Andrew Limbong. The podcast is produced by Danica Panetta and Chloe Weiner and edited by Sierra Crawford. Our founding editor is Petra Mayer. The show elements for this week were produced and edited by Timby Ermias, Brianna Scott, Shannon Rhodes, Michael Radcliffe, Jacob Gans, Paranjaran Wadananan, Michael Levitt, Melissa Gray, Samantha Balaban, Ed McNulty, and Elena Torek. Beth Donovan is our managing editor. Thanks for listening.
This message comes from NPR sponsor Ford, introducing the Mustang Mach-E Rally. Chief Engineer Donna Dixon shares why the Mustang Mach-E Rally takes EVs further into the performance space.
One thing drivers will love about the Rally is how capable it is. People need to get in and drive it because it just blows your mind when you get in and drive it. It holds true to having that pony on the front end. 0 to 60 times are going to be extremely fast, 480 horsepower, and a Magna Ride suspension that is tuned for off-road. I'm sure they've never thought of taking a Mustang Coupe off-road, right? So to be able to expand that to not just being on a pavement track to now, hey, let's go have some fun in the dirt, why not? It just shows you what we can do with our vehicles.
To learn more about the all-electric Mustang Mach-E Rally, go to Ford.com.